Hey everybody, this is Jimmy from This Movie Sucks, the podcast where we watch bad movies so you don't have to. On this episode of Behind the B Movie, we look at a classic for hardcore horror fans, the Trilogy of Terror. So bust out your Zuni fetish doll as we look at what may be considered the scariest horror movie made for primetime TV. The Trilogy of Terror was a made-for-TV horror movie that featured 3 stories, each featuring actress Karen Black as a different character. The film was written by longtime Twilight Zone and Outer Limits writer Richard Matheson, known for writing such gems as Jaws 3D and Omega Man in 1971. The story was then written as a teleplay by William Noland, who would go on the following year to write Logan's Run. The movie was directed by Dark Shadows director Dan Curtis, who would go on to film the World War II made-for-TV epic, The Winds of War and War and Remembrance.
I did a feature for him at Fox called Trilogy of Terror. It's on my credits there. I was warned about Curtis, that he uses every 4-letter word, and that was no surprise to me because, as I say, you're seeing me under controlled conditions. I have one of the worst vocabularies that you have ever heard, and it won't go out on this tape. That's for sure. But I only, as I said before, I only lose my temper. I think I've lost it once this year because I made a New Year's resolution. But I did lose it on the picture that I did. The last picture. This occasion, I'd rather not get into it. But anyway, I got along fine with Curtis. We were out scouting, and he was walking along beside me, and one day he said to me, "Who are these people?" And I said, "Well, that's your costume designer, and I spelled out the jobs." And he says, "I don't like that person, get rid of him." And I said, "He doesn't work for me." He says, "I want you to get rid of him anyway." Well, what do? You go to his boss, and I said, "I think you should go talk to Dan Curtis about this particular person."
The star of the film, Karen Black, was known at the time for her roles in both Easy Rider and 5 Easy Pieces. She would go on to have a long-spanning career, appearing in dozens of films. The film started out as a failed pilot for a horror anthology TV series. Trilogy of Terror first appeared on ABC in 1975 and sequentially gained a devoted cult following. Black originally didn't want to participate, but agreed after her husband at the time, Robert Burton, was cast in the role of the date-raping blackmailer. Although the actress has appeared in numerous horror films, it was her indelible quadruple role here that inspired the cult New York rockers The Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black. The film also allegedly inspired the 1984 horror blaxploitation flick Black Devil Doll from Hell. A belated sequel, Trilogy of Terror 2, also from Dark Shadows director Dan Curtis, followed in 1996. In the first segment, Karen Black portrays a prim college literature instructor who engages in a debauched affair with one of her students after he drugs and date rapes and blackmails her into submission. Here in the other stories, however, things aren't what they seem. This segment, entitled Julie, has a lot of references to vampires. When Chad goes into the room, he uses a fake name, Jonathan Hawker, a name taken from Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. During the drive-in theater scene, the movie The Night Stalker is shown in the background. This is an in-joke as reference to director Dan Curtis's TV movie The Night Stalker in 1972, about a Las Vegas detective investigating murders committed by a vampire. The character Chad was played by Robert Burton, and was actually married to Karen Black at the time of the shooting of this segment. Burton would later appear on the soap opera As the World Turns, and he also guest starred in the episode of The Cosby Show in 1970 entitled That Mouth is X-Rated. The second segment, entitled Millicent and Therese, features Black in two roles as good sister, bad sister twins who use witchcraft to settle their sexual and moral differences. This segment also stars Dark Shadows actor John Carrion and George Gaines, who would go on to be best known as the commander in the Police Academy movies.
There's a difference between what films that I do and the original notion that we were discussing, which was people think of you as.
Sure, I see what you're saying.
People think of me and they think of horror, and I think that's because the connectives are good. I think also I was just really excellent in Trilogy of Terror. It took me many years to figure that one out. You know, we thought it was the doll, we thought it was Dan, we thought it was this, and then I thought, you know what, I'm really good in that. So yeah, because I was really scared by the doll, and you know, people eventually said, "Oh my God, you're all alone with this little piece of wood," and yet we believed every minute of it that this little piece of wood was.
About the segment everyone remembers is the final segment in the bunch. You know, the one with the killer doll. Entitled Amelia, Black plays a spinster with an insufferable mother who sublets a high-rise apartment in the city to find romantic freedom. When she purchases a Zuni fetish warrior doll as a present for her anthropology professor, Beau, it comes to life and chases her around the flat with a considerable tenacity. When the film was first shown on Brazilian television in March 1981, censorship demanded that the third segment, Amelia, be completely cut. Because of this, the TV stations were forced to change the Portuguese title to Duas Histórias de Terror, or Two Horror Stories. The crew trying to make the Zuni doll come to life kept laughing because sometimes bits fell off, like an arm or its head. Richard Matheson insisted he adapted his own short story, Prey, himself, because he knew that it had to be the most frightening story in the trilogy. The original Zuni doll puppet is owned by director Dan Curtis and was used for new sculpts for the Zuni doll in the sequel, Trilogy of Terror 2. Karen Black contributed much to the third segment. She rewrote her first conversation with her mother on the telephone. Black wanted to emphasize that the mother was controlling and manipulative. The original words made the mother out to be too nice. Making the mother controlling of Amelia would make the audience more on her side when we realize what's going to happen to the mother when she comes to visit. Also, when the doll is trying to escape from the suitcase, the effects men could not figure out how to show Amelia had cut her finger. Black thought to have them place the blood on her finger and then she would hide it from the camera until it was time to reveal the bloody finger. The closing still of the segment is quite offsetting. The idea of the grinning and showing the fang-like teeth similar to the Zuni doll in the final and most chilling image of the scene actually came from Karen Black herself. Overall, the Trilogy of Terror was a trendsetter for the wave of anthology horror movies that would follow in the next decade. The first two segments, though well directed, are forgettable. But the final segment has gone down in horror history as one of the most terrifying segments ever to air on primetime TV. So, if you are interested in where the killer doll originates in film, definitely go ahead and give this one a watch. Trilogy of Terror is a classic and highly recommended.